All right, continuing from last time. Last time I mentioned going through and updating and adding some tests for the code that we've created. I started with the access log filter, and I combined basically the copy-pasted code that was in each method into its own method to simplify the tests here. And I added this post one as well. So that's looking good. Everything's working fine there. I also added a cores filter test where I've got my header map. Then after running the filter, I'm verifying that the cores headers have been injected into the header map so that they're part of the response. Everything looks good there. And then I implemented a security filter test where I've got one method that I'm using for all the failure cases, and then I'm verifying that depending on what headers are provided, I get specific messages back. And by implementing this test, I did identify a problem in the security filter. Initially, I was just calling new authorized exception with a string parameter. This actually isn't the method we want. That string parameter was turning into some object challenge, which was getting into a www authenticate header, so it wasn't actually doing what we wanted. It wasn't setting the message in the exception like we want. And so there's a bunch of constructors here. So instead of calling this one, passing in a string challenge in, I updated the code to invoke this one instead. So I'm passing in my string error message and then a response object with a status of unauthorized. Kind of like this one here. Let me revert this. So that way I am actually invoking the correct constructor. This message is making it in, and in the security test, I can see that error message being returned in the exception. And then the last one is providing all headers, and they're all valid. And so I do see that the security context is getting set in the container request context, and I'm verifying that that is happening correctly. So everything looks good there. And I think that's it for the code I added offline. And we can jump back into our test resource and its associated test. Now, so this test resource, since it extends Jersey test, it's actually standing up a Jetty instance under the hood, because we've got this Jetty, the Jersey test framework provider Jetty, which is used to run our effectively integration tests for our resources. So this stands up a Jetty server and then uses this application to configure it, and then we can run our tests against that Jetty server. So because this is actually standing up a Jetty server, I don't want this to be a unit test. I want it to be an integration test. And the difference between unit and integration tests is a little bit fluid, but basically the way I do it is, if a test stands up a server, like a Jetty in this case, or Postgres, any database, or if it reads or writes to files, or if it connects to some other service, anything more complicated than just invoking a few methods in the test, then I consider it an integration test instead of a unit test. And Maven does have separate plugins for those. Failsafe is used for integration tests. Surefire is used for unit tests. They're the same version and everything. They basically come from the same plugin project. They behave the same way. The main difference is which files they target based on file name. So we've called our test resource test. So if I rename this and change test to IT, then it will become an integration test that's run by Failsafe instead of a unit test run by Surefire. Now, this is a little bit tricky because we still have the word test in here, and in fact, if I come over here and bring up, yeah, Maven Surefire plugin. If I look at goals, we're using the test goal. So if I kind of scroll down through here, there's includes. Yeah, here we go, includes. So these are the files that the Surefire plugin looks for by default. You can see if it starts with the word test or if it ends with the word test, then Surefire is going to include it. So if we look at failsafe, which I kind of just guessed. Let's look at goals. Yeah, it's integration test, not test. So if I scroll down through here, there should also be an includes. Yeah, so failsafe looks for IT classes, whether it starts or ends with IT or cases. So that's one way to distinguish the difference. Now, what that effectively means is I need to get rid of this test off the front. So I'm going to go ahead and rename our resource here to hello resource. And we're just using this resource for testing. So I mean, it is a test resource, but we'll rename it for now. Well, we're going to end up either modifying it heavily once we start implementing our actual use case for our real API, but for now we'll just rename it to hello. Now this is also saying, do you want to rename the integration test at the same time? So I'm going to select all here and click OK. I'm also going to go ahead and delete this hello at the end. And our hello resource, I'll go ahead and delete hello here too. All right, so now that we've done some file renaming, I should be able to run Maven here, and we should see that like all our other tests that end in test will run in Surefire, and then our integration test will run via failsafe. All right, so I see the Surefire plugin here, and it's running security filter test, access log filter test, course filter test, and rapid API security context test. And I do see this log in here, which is a little bit annoying, but we'll leave that in there for now. And then our failsafe plugin runs hello resource IT because it ends in IT. And we're back to the 401 unauthorized error that we were seeing before. If I want to only run unit tests, I can say skip ITs, skip integration tests, and then when I run this, we're not going to actually run anything that ends in IT. So a lot of times you'll see that in some build pipelines where, like if you're going to cut a release, for example, you first do a build for, actually I didn't expect this, we'll fix this as well. You might do an initial build that runs all your tests, and then you'll do a follow-on build to cut a release, and then you'll skip tests and you'll skip ITs as part of that release cutting because you know that you just built it with the tests, and so everything will run just fine. So we'll look at this in a little bit. For now, let's go look at our hello resource and let's fix this so that we get what we expect. Right now we're getting 401 unauthorized responses. So let's copy paste this. Test no security headers. So in this case, we're expecting a 401, and we'll see what the response comes back as, and we'll get rid of these headers for now as well. So let's go ahead and run this. Now we're not specifying any kind of. Okay, so right now the actual response that comes back is empty. So we're not getting any kind of error message or anything like that, which makes sense because we're not trying to handle that not authorized exception that we're throwing. Right? We have no code in place to handle not authorized exceptions. So it makes sense that we continue to get a 401 as a status, but we don't get any kind of response body back. So if I copy paste this and say only proxy secret, if we can add a security header, proxy secret, get header, we should still get a 401 and still get an empty body. Same thing if we add proxy secret and user headers. And same thing if we include a subscription that's invalid. And for our last one, we'll provide everything. And in theory, we should get a 200 OK response back here. And we should still get our cores headers in the response also. All right, so let me come up here and just run all these. All right, all greens across the board. And we're still getting our binder logging. We're getting our user principal logging when it is successful. All the values there look correct. And so yeah, everything's looking good here, except for, actually my mouse just died. So everything looks good here, except for our empty request bodies coming back. And I'm going to go ahead and pause it here, and we'll pick up next time, and we'll fix our response bodies to actually have content. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and change my battery in my wireless mouse. All right, till next time. Use the trackpad here for a second.